All right, welcome to New Stripe City, a podcast for diehard Bengals fans. I'm your host, Ace Boogie. I have my co-host, On G, and today we're going to talk about Colin Kaepernick and a potential pairing with the Bengals. We'll also talk about the WCPO boycott against the Bengals for Joe Mixon. They're apparently boycotting us. And also, we'll wrap things up with the wide receiver room and which wide receivers we see making this roster. Obviously, there were some receivers added during the draft, so we'll touch on that. But first things first, G, let's talk about this whole Colin Kaepernick situation. There haven't been any reports as far as the Bengals being interested in Kaepernick, but it seems like a lot of people in the community seem to want to see whether we would be interested or not in signing Colin Kaepernick. What are your thoughts about the Bengals bringing on Kaepernick?
Um, I would love to see Colin Kaepernick be employed because I think he deserves to be employed. I think it sucks at this point that no one has tried to pick him up. As far as him being on the Bengals, I don't know how effective he would be in our offensive style because Colin Kaepernick comes with his own style. Like, you got to have an offense that's ready for him. So I think it would be hard for him to come off the bench because he's not going to start over Andy, to come into our offense off the bench if Andy were to go down. I think it'd be a hard transition for him. It'd be a hard transition for us. But Colin Kaepernick definitely needs to be employed somewhere. Like, I think it's very disrespectful to even talk about him not having a job right now. And we all know why. And I just think it's unacceptable. It sucks for him.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you look at some of the guys who are unemployed, like a Ray Rice and a Greg Hardy, and I feel like they have valid reasons for not being employed. I think, like you said, Kaepernick is basically being blackballed. But in terms of him fitting with our team, I think that there's a lot of interest in Bengals fans, and there's a lot of news about this because it came out. I believe it was the year after we drafted Andy Dalton that Mike Brown wanted to draft Colin Kaepernick, and he's always been interested in him. And initially, Kaepernick had more success than Dalton on the field, obviously getting to a Super Bowl. But I think, like you said, as far as the potential fit, I really don't see it because we'd have to change up our offense. And, maybe if Hugh Jackson was still here, he's more of a creative offensive coordinator. But you're talking about Ken Zampese, and I'm not down on Ken Zampese, but he already has to adjust this offense, which struggled last year, into having a guy like a John Ross, adding a Joe Mixon, and figuring out how to use all of these tools. I feel like the last thing that you want to do is add a scrambling quarterback to that mix. It's just like, how would that offense fit? Like you said, the only way I could even possibly see the Bengals bringing him in is if they were to move McCarron, which it seems by all accounts they're not willing to do that. They clearly value McCarron a lot. I feel like if there was going to be a McCarron trade, it would have been during the draft. I think the only other hope for a McCarron trade will possibly be if someone goes down in training camp, i.e. a Teddy Bridgewater last year, a similar situation to that. Maybe they would pursue Kaepernick, but I just don't think that it's a great fit, like you said.
Yeah, and even in the beginning, it was always said that Mike Brown wanted Kaepernick over Andy Dalton. And sometimes it's funny to think about, where would we be if we did pick up Colin Kaepernick over Andy Dalton? And, sometimes I like to play with that idea because I feel like we could be in a much different situation as a team than we are right now. And, our dynamics of our offense would be crazy if Colin Kaepernick was our quarterback right now and we drafted John Ross and Joe Mixon. That would be crazy if our offense was made already around Colin Kaepernick with those pickups. But, it's not.
Yeah, I totally agree. It kind of reminds me of, and I know me and you were huge Mike Vick fans back in the day, back in high school. It reminds me of when Michael Vick was reportedly considering signing with the Bengals. If you remember when he came back, there was a potential of two teams, I believe, for him to go to. One was Philadelphia and one was Cincinnati. And it's crazy because he wanted to come to Cincinnati, but Tony Dungy was able to convince him not to come to Cincinnati. And I remember that and the uproar that it caused in the community because it was right after the whole dogfighting thing. And I sat there and told people, I was like, look, I understand what happened, but it would not shock me if Mike Brown went after Michael Vick because you're talking about a guy that was $100 million quarterback, a guy that transcended the game of football, and he was coming at the price of $2 million for 2 years? And it's just crazy that later on it comes out that we were interested. And another thing that kind of rose through my mind when that happened was maybe back then Mike Brown knew that Carson Palmer was disgruntled, and he, I guess in a sense, saw Michael Vick as a potential way to, I guess in a sense, smooth that situation over. That way you're bringing in a guy like Vic. But I think that like you said with the Kaepernick situation, it would be pretty interesting to see how our offense would kind of have been if we had taken Kaepernick. I think one of the things that I think people held against Kaepernick when he first came out was that apparently he wasn't ready initially from day one to jump out there, which, I mean, I feel like that's kind of speculative because you never know who's ready until you throw a guy out there. Obviously, the 49ers felt like he was ready to throw him out there. So I think, like you said, having all of those weapons, it definitely would have been interesting to see how Kaepernick would have done here, especially seeing a scrambling quarterback in the AFC North. I don't think we've ever really had that dynamic before.
Nah, like that would but even like taking it back then to like when we were interested in Michael Vick, like if we would have picked up Michael Vick, it would have been a smooth transition for Colin Kaepernick if we would have drafted him in 2014. Was that 2014? Yeah, like that would have been a transition.
2011, I think.
2011. But that would have been from Michael Vick to Colin Kaepernick. Like you already had your offense set up right there. That would have been crazy.
That would have been dope. I mean, man, it's kind of fun thinking about it. I mean, the Bengals are already going to be considered a Madden team next year. If they would have had one of those guys, it definitely would have been considered definitely a Madden team. I think the only other time we've had scrambling quarterbacks, they're kind of like garbage guys like Anthony Wright and Josh Johnson, guys that aren't really going to make an impact on the field for real like that.
Josh Johnson.
Yeah, Josh Johnson. Oh, my God. I'm so glad we got rid of him. But moving on. Obviously, we talked about the Joe Mixon thing. You actually posted an article on Joe Mixon talking about welcome to Cincinnati and giving your thoughts on how the Bengals should take him in, give him this second chance. You also posted that on your blog, which is G Knows Football. So if you guys get a chance, make sure you check out G's blog at gknowsfootball.com. But obviously, there's been some news around town that a local news network in Cincinnati, WCPO, is boycotting the Bengals simply because they drafted Joe Mixon. G, what are your thoughts on that boycott?
It's very mixed feelings because I understand how a city could be upset. I understand why a radio station is upset and they want to boycott. But in the same breath, I don't think it's fair for him.
Seems like we must be a little
and I'm ready to move on. Say, as somebody like WCPO that's boycotting them, it's like a constant reminder to this guy who's trying to move on. And it's like, you won't allow him to be great. Like you're blocking him from being great. Give him a chance to show y'all that, you know, maybe I'm not this person that y'all think I am. Like, and that's what you got to give him a chance. And I don't think it's fair to boycott him and give him that constant reminder of I made a mistake a few years ago and y'all just keep blowing it up. Like you got to give the guy a chance, and that's how I feel about it.
Right, I totally agree. This is my thing on it. If you're gonna boycott the Bengals, then I need you to boycott the Bengals on all fronts. If you're really taking that stance,
that's true.
We don't need to see any kind of Bengals articles whatsoever from your website because apparently, you know, I don't know. It just doesn't seem genuine to me. If you're gonna boycott the Bengals, I shouldn't be able to jump on WCPO.com right now and go to a Bengals section. If you're really gonna do that. You know, it just seems like I don't know if they're saying that they're going to boycott the Bengals or if they're, you know, trying to influence fans to do it. But I think either way, if you're going to take a stance, then you need to back it up. And I mean, given the situation that newspapers are in right now, I really don't see them being in a position to boycott anything.
Right.
That industry's already losing a lot of money. So if you want to boycott the Cincinnati Bengals, don't just boycott Joe Mixon, boycott the entire team. And any source, like I bet you if I jump on WCPO right now, they have some Bengal stuff up there.
I mean, I'm sure they do. And it's just like, you're right, change the title. Like, you're really just boycotting Joe Mixon.
Right.
You're not boycotting the Bengals. Like, you're just mad. And it's just, I mean, it's okay to be mad. It's okay to have these frustrations and these feelings. And it's okay to, like, discuss your opinion. But boycotting the whole organization, like, that's a lot.
Right, I totally agree. I think I was listening to a podcast with Mo Edgar. I believe he's on ESPN 1530 in the Natty, And I kind of agree with what he said. It was like, okay, you can be mad about the Joe Mixon thing. You can have your thoughts on wanting him to have a second chance. But the thing that I agree with him on is there's some fans that are trying to like rationalize what Joe Mixon did and kind of like try to shift the blame on the woman. And I totally disagree with that. When it gets to that,
no, I know.
guys are just tripping.
Like, no, you can't. Don't do that. And I think it's just it happened. You have your feelings, you have your thoughts, you have your concerns. But at the end of the day, we got to move on. Like
Right.
we can't stay stagnant and stay angry and stay upset. Like you got to move past that. Like it is what it is. He's a member of the Cincinnati Bengals right now. Like he's going to go through training camp. He'll probably make the team. He'll probably be a starter. And he's probably going to be with us for a while. So it's kind of like you got to take it.
Right. And I totally agree. I mean, he's going to have to deal with a lot of that stuff anyway throughout the rest of his career. So, I mean,
it is what it is. Or
exactly. Yeah. Boycotting it
just being angry about it.
Pretty silly. I just don't believe it. I just don't buy into it. If you're going to take a stance, like I said, show up at games with signs and stuff like that, then do that. Don't try to sit up here and talk about you're going to boycott the Bengals and then try to switch it to once you start getting hits from the draft, you're switching it to should the Bengals fans boycott it? No. If that's what your stance is, take your stance. But the biggest, I think, thing that came from this draft is the receiver room. And obviously, the receiver room is loaded right now. You're talking about a room that has A.J. Green, Brandon LaFell, Tyler Boyd, Cody Core, Alex Erickson, and now Josh Malone and John Ross, amongst some other guys like Jake Kumaro. People want the Bengals to keep 7 receivers.
But why?
I don't understand why. In my opinion, I think that there should be 6 that should stay. But, G, what's your opinion on who the Bengals should keep as far as their receiver depth, and who is somebody that you think that they could potentially let go?
I mean, I think we need to hold on to Brandon LaFell for sure. Like, I think his name is probably not going to be mentioned with all those top names. You got your John Ross, you got AJ Green. Of course, they're going to stay. But, like, you're forgetting about, like, Brandon LaFell, who I think is a very quality receiver and very underrated. You got to hold on to him. I think Tyler Boyd might be the one that's gone.
Ooh,
like,
Tyler
I don't know. Because I think he has potential to be a great receiver. Eventually, the money thing is going to be an issue. And I don't think we'll be able to hold him because of the money factor. Like, it's like, you're going to pay AJ Green. You're going to pay John Ross. Brandon LaFell, you can hold on to for not as much money, and you're going to get a quality receiver. But Tyler Boyd, I think eventually is going to be that one that's going to want some money, and I think he will deserve it. I think he's a great receiver, and I think you're going to have to let him go. It's going to be like Mohamed Sanu.
Right.
It's like you love him. He's a great talent, but the man wants some more money, and you know he deserves the money, and you're not going to give it to him. He's got to go.
Right. I think you're right. I think you're spot on as far as Tyler Boyd eventually wanting to leave Cincinnati. Honestly, one thing that kind of scares me is I think that he could end up actually going to the Steelers in like a couple years. I could really see that happening. Because I mean, obviously he's a Pittsburgh native. Gone as far as he is. Oh, excuse me. To leave Cincinnati. Honestly, one thing that kind of scares me is I think that he. Sorry about that, guys. All right. I was trying to jump in this chat room here because I know that we have a lot of people that were chatting last time just to see if we had anything in there. But like I said, getting back to what I said, I think that Tyler Boyd could eventually leave for Pittsburgh. I think that I would disagree with. I don't think that they're going to cut him now, but I could see, like you said, that scenario playing out. My opinion would be that I would think that the Bengals should keep 6 receivers. I think that to keep AJ Green, obviously, that's like a automatic lock. Brandon LaFell, I think, is also an automatic lock. As much as people want to try to criticize him, I agree with you saying that he's definitely a good receiver. He's shown that he can step it up in the absence of AJ Green. I also say that Tyler Boyd is a lock just because of the second-round pick the year before. Where it starts to get kind of iffy is Cody Core. And I like Cody Core. I think he showed a lot of potential. I think that he deserves to stick around as well. And then you talk about John Ross. Obviously, he's a lot because he was a first-round pick. And then you have Josh Malone, who was a fourth-round pick. I think that also makes him a lock as well. In my opinion, I don't think that they really need Alex Erickson. There's a lot of people talking about, we need to keep 7 so we can keep Alex Erickson. I like
Wow.
Alex Erickson. He was pretty good for us on the return team last year. But you're talking about a team last year where we were depleted at receiver and he still couldn't get on the field. Why would you keep him? You just drafted
Right.
John Ross, one of the best returners in the game.
I was
You
about to say he's
also
going to be the return man there.
Right, exactly. Like you have other options at returner. So to me, in my opinion, it makes kind of Alex Erickson in a sense expendable. And I think that you only need to keep 6 receivers. So those are my thoughts on it. I don't think that they need to keep 7. I think that there's going to be a lot of competition on this roster. And I mean,
Especially when you got a talented tight end like Tyler Eifert too.
Exactly.
Like, there's no need for you to have 7 receivers.
Right. It's almost like you almost forget that Tyler Eifert is on the team, even though he's like the second best option. But, you're thinking about John Ross, you're thinking about all of the receivers, LaFell and Boyd, and then you have to also remember you still have Tyler Eifert just sitting out there. So, yeah, with all that being said, like you said, I don't think that there's a need for us to keep 7 receivers. I'll go with 6. And people are like, oh, our receiver room is deep. Well, if it was deep, we wouldn't have picked 2 receivers.
Right.
If the back end of our rosters, as far as receiver, was deep, like we wouldn't have picked 2 of them this year. So those are my thoughts on it.
I mean, and then also you got to think about, like, you made a good point about the offensive coordinator. Like, what is he going to do with 7 receivers? Like, I don't see our offensive coordinator right now being that talented to figure out what I'm going to do with all these receivers. Like, I feel like even still, in my opinion, I don't think he really knows what he's going to do with John Ross. So, I just don't think it's there for our coordinator to know what to do with all that type of talent.
Right, and I'm seeing people say cut Cody Core, keep Alex Erickson. That's ridiculous to me. Cody Core had a pretty good year last year, and I mean, for the most part, we didn't play him the majority of the year. And then when we finally do throw the guy in there, he started making plays.
Right. And again, like Erickson, if he's just there for a return, because I don't see him being very effective as a wide receiver on the field, you got a return man in John Ross.
Right.
And what did Erickson really do return wise? That was great.
What they're trying to say, G, is basically, Erickson finished, top in the NFL in terms of average return yards. And I'm like, that's cool, but I mean, I don't know if he scored 1 touchdown or something, but it's like you have John Ross. I'm sorry, but that just like
that like in the same breath, like Pac-Man Jones can make a return touchdown for us. So it's just like, really? Like, right. I mean, I don't know if Pac-Man Jones is doing that this year, but he has before. So, and I mean, I'm sure he did last year, maybe 1 or 2 returns. But again, I think that's a position that's very easy to interchange somebody else with. Like, you don't need to hold on to him for that reason.
Right, I totally agree. And that was my whole thing. It's like, this guy is a special teamer. I mean, I think that he does have potential. Don't get me wrong. He definitely showed some potential in the preseason. But, in my opinion, I would probably cut him and keep him on the practice squad. He probably would get picked up by somebody. But I really wouldn't be worried if that were the case. Like, if we weren't able to, assign him to the practice squad and somebody ends up putting a claim on him, fine. I mean, it's just, I'm not going to lose sleep over Alex Erickson, basically point blank. I'd rather keep a guy like Pat Sims or somebody on the defensive line over keeping Alex Erickson. I mean, you should, and like you said, how is Ken Zampese even going to use John Ross? Like, the fact that he has all of these receivers to use, all of these receivers to input, where is there really going to be space for Alex Erickson? Is he really even make the active roster on the day of? I don't see it happening. Yeah. You're talking about 45 players. I don't see them having 6 or 7 receivers active. They didn't even do it last year.
Yeah. Like, I really am. There's part of me that feels almost like the offense is like, you get like a dude that gets a new pair of J's, but he doesn't have an outfit to wear with it. It's like you got these fly-ass shoes, but you don't know how to use it really. And I feel that way kind of about all these receivers in our offense. Like, we got all this crazy talent. You got John Ross, you got Joe Mixon. Like, we got the new J's, but we don't know how to wear them. So you gotta start cutting down somewhere so that you can see things a little bit clearer.
And I think with that fly outfit, I think the offensive line is a fly outfit because we don't have it. We have some gear from Value City or something right now with that offensive line.
Absolutely. So it's kind of like, we got the new J's, but outfit's not really fly. Don't know how it's going to work, but
Right.
it'll be interesting. It'll definitely be interesting.
Right. Well, G, obviously you're in Miami, soaking in that sunshine, so we won't hold you too long. So we'll go ahead and end this with a who day, all day, every day, and especially on Sunday.
Always. Love it. It's been great.